In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how you do the steps in the use a variable and an if statement assignment. So we'll open the HTML file like we've been doing with Notepad++. We'll start by selecting the Run option to open this in Chrome so we can look at the current behavior of our web page. You'll notice that when you click on a paint can, it uses that color to set the background of the canvas, but also the image here is changed to a faded version of the original. I'll click on a couple of more of these. So you notice that the color in the paint can becomes faded, or in a sense grayed out, quote unquote grayed out. But if you click on it again, it still works. Even the faded or grayed out buttons continue to function. Normally on a web page or program, when something grays out, it is no longer clickable. So the purpose of this assignment is to make it so that a paint can, once it's been clicked, becomes inactive or disabled so that it can't be clicked again. And for this kind of thing, this is where variables and if statements come in very handy. So let's go back to our file and start by declaring a variable. So we'll insert the code for the variable right here at the top of the script before any of the functions. And you create a variable by using the var command, and then you state the name or declare the name of the variable that you're going to use. And then we're going to go ahead and assign a value to it. We'll just put the number 1 in the variable. Use the semicolon to close the command. So now we have a variable called red state with the number 1 as its value. And you're wondering, how does this help us to do what we want to do? Well, now we need to use an if statement. Since I named the variable red state, I intended to apply this to the paint red function. And so now we want to use an if statement to set a condition. Before we run this line of code to set the background color to red, we want to check and see what the condition of our variable is. And so we write if, and then we check for the condition. And then in parentheses, we enter the condition that we're checking for. And we're checking for the condition of the variable red state, and we're comparing it to the value of 1 by using the comparison operator. So the code will compare red state, the value that's in red state, with this value here, 1, and if they're the same, it will say this is true, that this condition is true. And then it will perform any lines of code that are inside the curly braces. If it's not true, then it won't perform any of the lines of code inside the braces. But the behavior that we want to change is that the next time the button is clicked and this function is called, if this function has already been run once, we don't want it to run again. So we use the variable and change the state to 0. So if you think of this as 1 equals on and 0 equals off, we have just turned the variable off. And don't forget to put the semicolon at the end. So now we have created the variable and we have set the conditions. So let's save it and go back to our web page and refresh it. And we've only done this to one paint can, so we can click on a couple others first and show that we click on the magenta and it turns magenta. Click on the yellow and it turns yellow. The paint cans are faded, but if you click on them, they still work. But with the red one, with the if statement, we click on it, it turns the background red, but if we click on the yellow one and then go back and see if we can turn it red again, it is now disabled because the red state variable now contains the value 0. So now anytime we click on the button and it calls the paint red function and it checks this condition here, does red state equal 0? The answer is no, or false, so it does not run this line of code. And we have now used a variable and an if statement to disable this button after it's been clicked once.